This is now video 13 in module 1. I'm going to look at these two items, upgrade and clean install. I know we've already looked at most of these points, but let's just take a look at a couple of extra points in here and do some reminders as we go. First of all, if I'm going to do an upgrade, I need to boot to my Windows OS first, my Windows 7, my Windows 8 OS, and then run the setup files off of the DVD, the ISO file, or the USB from within Windows. In other words, I can't upgrade by booting to a Windows DVD or USB first. I can use that DVD, a virtual DVD from an ISO file as we demonstrated earlier. I can also upgrade directly from the media creation tool. As we noticed earlier, I can just click this and upgrade directly from here. Now, during that upgrade, I'm going to be given a choice of keeping the apps, keeping the data, or nothing. And if I choose nothing, it really is the equivalent of a clean install. The only difference is it will put an extra file on my system that we'll talk about later. But other than that, it's just like doing a clean install. Now, if we do a clean install, first of all, we need to boot to the Windows DVD or USB. So we're going to boot to the drive, to the disk, not to the hard drive. And then we're going to choose custom install. Now, what I mean by that is partway through that installation, I'm going to come to a window that looks like this: upgrade or custom. This is a lie. If I choose upgrade, let me just click that. What I get is something called compatibility report, and it says, well, you can't do that. I get an error message essentially that says, no, you cannot do an upgrade from here. Why? Because I booted directly to this DVD first and then tried to install it. So no, that's not allowed. I want to choose custom install, and then I have the drive that I want to install it to. I can also set up a multi-boot installation, by the way. And I want to go back here again, and you notice that I have here, I've got one disk available to me. Now this is on a virtual, so it's a 60 gigabyte drive. But if I were to have a second drive, and let's just make say a 30 gigabyte drive here, so that I have a second drive, I could install one of them on this drive and one of them on this drive. Right? So that was megabytes instead of gigabytes. I'm sorry, I can't do that, can I? Let's delete that and try that again. 60 gigabytes here, let's say new, and then do 30000 and apply that. There we go. Now these aren't really big enough, and by the way, it made some extra stuff. Why did it make some extra stuff? Well, Windows does create some very small drives. See, these are in the megabyte sizes here for system recovery in case I have a crash during or in case the installation doesn't work. And then one of them is a boot system. So don't worry about those. But you notice I've got two big files here, about 30 gigabytes and another 30 gigabytes approximately. So I could install one onto this one and one onto this one. Now these aren't really they're not probably big enough. I probably want to make them bigger, but that's what I had available here. So I could now do a dual boot installation by choosing one and booting it, and then choosing the other one and booting it and installing that one. So that would also be possible. And once I do a dual boot like that, then I would probably have to set up something called the BCD editor, which now I can set, well, which one do I want to boot by default every time I start up my machine, and how long do I want it to wait for me to choose which one I want to boot up to. So those are all done in something called BCD edit, which is a command line tool that you type directly here, BCD edit, like that, and it said it couldn't be opened, access is denied, and that's because I didn't choose to open this as an administrator. I need to right click there, open it as an administrator, and then type BCD edit. There, that's better. So then I have a number of commands within the BCD edit that it tells me how to use them so that I can set some of those things up. But That's a little bit deeper than we need to go into for this section, but I wanted to at least show it to you and make you aware of it. There's another way I could do that, by the way. If I go to something called the system configuration, I typed msconfig there, and set up boot, I would see more than one here, and I could set one of them as a default. I could set my timeout and how they boot, and several options there also if I had multi-boot situation. All right, so that's that part, and in video 14 we'll take a look at some installation activities that go on the system, and then finally we'll look at some things that you need to do after the installation.